There was a 13th century Dominican called Reginald of Orleans. And when he was dying, he said, "It has been no merit for me to be a Dominican because I've enjoyed it so much."
It's an absolutely wonderful, wonderful way of life. I haven't regretted it ever.
It's definitely been worth it. I've been incredibly happy. I didn't envisage myself miserable, but I didn't quite realise how happy I would be.
What I found was a very human group of people, very different personalities, very understanding, a huge amount of acceptance. That was incredible.
I think what I've found in religious life and what has probably surprised me most is just how much it's challenged me personally, spiritually, emotionally, just to be the very best person that I can be.
My name's Father Christopher Jamison, and I'm a Benedictine monk and Director of the National Office for Vocation. Now, the standing joke about Catholic religious life is that not even the Pope knows how many religious orders there are in the Church. While there are some people such as hermits and members of secular institutes who lead a consecrated life outside a religious order, most consecrated men and women are members of a religious congregation. To tell you about the hundreds and hundreds of different orders that exist today would take forever. So instead, I'm going to take you on a journey to meet some religious men and women who'll tell you about their own experience.
First of all, there is the monastic tradition. Men and women called by Christ to live in stable communities, often in quite large communities, often at one remove from towns and cities. And some of the most beautiful monasteries in the world are really very famous and very ancient. And that stable life with a great commitment to the divine office, community prayer, a tradition of hospitality, welcoming people into these magnificent settings and offering that hospitality as part of their mission in the Church, being sanctuaries at the service of the Church. An example of a monastic order is my own order, the Benedictine order, which is one of the oldest monastic orders in Europe. Another variety of religious order is those communities of men and women, such as the friars, who live in monastic type communities, but who go outside the monastery to work and who are more mobile, going around preaching, meeting the needs of the poor and so on outside the monastery. Franciscans, for example, do this and go out from the monastery to engage with people. And then there's also the Dominican order, known formally as the Order of Preachers, and I'm going to meet Father Timothy Radcliffe, the first Englishman ever to be Master of the Dominicans.
At school, I really wasn't a very religious figure at all. I was one of the boys who, smoked behind the pavilion, and I was always sneaking off to the pub whenever I could. In fact, I was almost expelled for reading Lady Chatterley's Lover during benediction. And when I left school, therefore, no idea of a vocation to religious life or priesthood crossed my mind. But then I began to make friends for the first time who weren't Christian. And they put the question to me, but is what you believe true? Is the teaching of the Church true? And I slowly came to think that that was a really important question. Is it true that Jesus is the Son of God? Is it true that he rose from the dead? And if it is true, it must be of enormous importance. And then I remembered there was an order which had the motto, Truth Veritas. I couldn't remember which order. I phoned my friends, discovered it was the Dominicans, and so here I am. I think religious life has a particular vocation in the life of the whole community, in that it's often religious men and women who take us out of the Church, out of our known little world, into places where Christ is unknown and unnamed. Pope Francis says we've got to get out of the sacristy. He says we got to get out into the world. We got to get immersed in people's problems. And very often it's religious who do this in different ways. Little communities of sisters in the barrios and the slums of Latin America, for example. Religious who venture into new worlds like, well, it could be the television or media or wherever. Religious life helps one to do that. It helps one with the solidarity of religious life, with the fraternity, to dare to engage beyond the bounds of the church, to go to places where Christ is not named and discover him there.
Brother Toby has recently joined the Dominicans and has just taken his first vows after 12 months.
If you'd asked me at university, write down your wish list, I pretty much had it. And yet there seemed something else that I really wanted more than all this other stuff that I thought I had wanted. And yet there were some pretty painful and scary hurdles to go through to get there. There are three vows. You have poverty, chastity and obedience. And I think the attitudes of my friends when they hear about you're taking those vows is, life must be over now, coming to an end. I cannot imagine what a terrible existence with these three things. And clearly there are sacrifices in them, but there's also a great liberation with them as well. Obedience is actually probably less than actually going to an office each day and having somebody tell you to do these tiny little sort of chores that you think are pointless. And actually our obedience is in order to serve the church. And it's more an obedience to our way of life than an obedience to an individual who's just telling you to do stuff all the time. I think with poverty, the key thing is not being overly attached to possessions and things that are going to get in the way of your relationship with God. And I think I became aware of that as I was packing to go into the novitiate, actually the hold that some of my possessions had over me. And so that was a valuable lesson in the importance of the vow of poverty. And it's actually been a liberating experience. Friends are absolutely shocked by the idea that you're not going to be having sex. As I sometimes point out to them, they also spend most of their lives not having sex, but they're allowed to and I'm not. And I think actually the biggest thing that you're aware of is that actually you're giving up the opportunity of intimacy with that special person. And actually it's more than actually sexual relations. It's somebody who is your immediate confidant, somebody who gives you that caress, holds your hand. And there is a gap there. You fill that gap and this longing for love and to be loved that you have with Christ, and pour that out on other people. And I think you're kidding yourself if you think that actually celibacy is just an easy thing and you just ignore it. It's another way of living, but ultimately if it doesn't make you more loving, then it's going to have a negative effect. And I think it's finding ways to use those energies in a more sort of loving way generally for other people, and also to deepen your relationship with Christ.
The Carmelite order has women who are enclosed, unlike the men who are friars who go out from their monastic type community to work in the local area. Now, the enclosed sisters have a unique vocation within the church, which is this tremendous commitment to prayer and to this sense of the immediacy of God's presence that they express through this very dynamic and continuous commitment to community prayer, to private prayer, and to attentiveness to God's word in their reading of Scripture. This is a powerhouse of prayer. I'm at Ware in Hertfordshire, where there is a Carmel, which is what we call a community of Carmelite women who are enclosed, living a monastic life. And I'm going to meet Sister Zoe and some other members of the community.
When I was younger and studying, I did a science degree, and I was very involved in the OTC, the Officers Training Corps, and the TA. my life just didn't look as though it was pointing towards anything religious or churchy at all. So I think it's given people quite a shock who've known me earlier. I was what I considered to be a normal person, had a rather extensive social life. I had a partner and a house and a dog, and after my degree I started teaching and youth work, and everything was quite normal until God intervened, and look at me now. When I first came, there were so many things that were different, but also in some ways the same, that nothing was entirely surprising until I got to clothing. And then I was really surprised at how difficult I found that, because I was still in the process of thinking at that point, wanting to be a nun. But when it came to putting the habit on, I thought, gosh, I've got to look like a nun as well. And that's actually really sort of freaked me quite a bit, you know, the fact that I couldn't just sort of wear jeans and normal clothes. So that was a surprise to me, how, how scary that's part of the process was. But it was okay once I got over it.
It is a very structured lifestyle, so we follow a timetable. The life is actually very balanced. The time's divided into little blocks of silent, solitary prayer, of prayer as a community together, praying the Divine Office. We have Mass every day. But in between we work, and we try and work alone and in silence wherever that's possible. In many ways, it's actually a very normal life. The tasks of everyday life for a big group of people are there and need doing. But we try and keep a climate of prayer and of silence and of reflection, so we're not distracted by background music, by TV. We don't talk outside of specific times unless necessary. It's a life apart from the busyness of life in the world, not because we're rejecting that, but because we actually need the freedom to live this life of prayer more intensely. I think the church, and in fact the world, need there to be communities of people who live apart as we do and make ourselves more available to God. People that don't take on other commitments, so that we can be more free to focus on the life of prayer. We're not doing it for our own spiritual perfection. We're not doing it to sort of climb to the top of the ladder on our own. We believe that prayer actually affects the whole world, and incredible though it seems, any one person making themselves open to God in prayer is somehow giving God a way into helping and healing the world, because God's chosen to involve people in that work. It's a kind of graciousness of God that he wants us to help him. It's not saying that we're any better at prayer than anybody else, but that we've got the privilege of a life that makes it perhaps more possible. And without that belief in the effectiveness of prayer, actually this life doesn't make sense.
Another variety of religious orders are those women and men who don't live in a monastic lifestyle, but who are living out in the community in often very ordinary settings, in ordinary houses or in slightly larger facilities, but set in the midst of the local community. These apostolic women and men have a huge variety of ways of living and a huge variety of work that they do. But in general, they would be focusing on responding to the needs of the society around them, either through social engagement or through educational engagement, or through just meeting the needs of the local parish in a variety of different ways. One of these communities is the Faithful Companions of Jesus, and I'm going to meet Sister Lynn Barron, and she's now working as a chaplain at a university in South London.
I've just become the chaplain here. I'm working as one of a team of 3. There's 3 FCJ sisters. We've just taken over, at the request of the diocese, taken over the chaplaincy for both Goldsmiths University and London South Bank. We're faithful companions of Jesus, and the spirit of our congregation, or the gift of the congregation to the church, would be really to do with companionship. We take our inspiration from the women who were faithful to Jesus, who accompanied Jesus, walked with him in his ministry, and remained faithful with him to the cross and beyond that, and witnessed to the resurrection. So how might I see that fitting into the work that I'm doing as a chaplain? It's really to do with that walking with people in their ordinary everyday life, that gift of companionship, that gift of fidelity, staying with people in whatever the situation is that they find themselves in. We live a community life which is amongst ordinary people, out and among people. We would tend to refer to that as apostolic, and perhaps I don't look as some people might consider a nun to look. I'm wearing ordinary dress. I think there's something important for me as well about that public witness of being a sister, of showing my faith through the work that I'm doing. People know that I'm a sister. I introduce myself as an FCJ. I wear a cross, FCJ badge, as a witness to that, and in fact when we receive it, we're asked to wear it as a public witness of who we are and what we're about. So this living with and accompanying people in their ordinary lives is very inspired by a spirituality of finding God in everything, finding God in all things, which comes from the teaching of St. Ignatius of Loyola, who founded the Jesuits. And we're a group of women religious who live that same spirituality. I have been asked whether I could just do all of the same things, do the work that I'm doing, just as an ordinary laywoman. And it's true, I could, no doubt about it. I could do all of that. But for me, there's something underlying about the way of life, about that personal commitment of my whole life to God in this particular way as a religious sister.
So at the end of this journey through religious life, what emerges as essential in the religious life is, of course, what's essential in the Christian life. Those fundamental Christian virtues of prayer, responsiveness to the call of Christ, charity, dedication to service of other people, and so on. But lay people can say, well, we're dedicated to all these things too. So what is distinctive about the dedication of the religious man or woman? Well, it's the public nature of this dedication that's so distinctive. Whether you're in an enclosed convent or whether you're brothers and sisters working in a shanty town, everybody knows that you are a religious person, dedicated publicly to the proclamation of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And it's that public nature and this permanent nature of your public commitment. There's never a day off from being a religious. That public commitment is the distinctive feature, and that's going to be more and more important as we look to the future of the new evangelization, when we need more people, men and women, who will dedicate themselves to this public proclamation of the good news of Jesus Christ.
You can't join an order with a grim determination that you're going to survive, however awful the rest of the brethren are. You have to be at ease.
I love that bit in the gospel where Jesus says, I've come that they may have life and have it to the full. And for me, that's what my vocation has been about. And I think essentially that is what vocation is. It's becoming the person you are called to be. So follow where you feel that sense of life.
Yes, you can go and spend a weekend, but you don't know what 50 days is going to be like until you spend 50 days. And to me, it's been a great joy, and you lose nothing in trying it. There's no shame, and you would know that it wasn't for me, but I gave it a go and it would cure an itch.
Listen to what your heart's saying, pray a lot, throw yourself into the life of the church. Let the church form you and see where it leads. It's not all at the rational level.
I would say to anybody thinking about religious life right now, give it a go, because it's a really exciting time, and I think we really could do wonders if we get our act together and get enough people doing it. There's so much potential.
If you'd like to know more about Consecrated Life, do please feel free to contact us at the National Office for Vocation via our website ukvocation.org. And if you'd like to know more about religious life, do visit ukreligiouslife.org. We'd be delighted to help you.